Hello and welcome to this Printers Plan tutorial video. In this video I'll be showing you how to set up a digital printer copier service. Starting off, I'll have to open Printers Plan and navigate to my Services tab, where I'll have to find where I want this service to live. So I've got my digital department and I've got a printer category, and I'm just going to click New. So once I have this new service here, you can see at the very top it came in with a category type digital printer and copier, so that's exactly the type of service that I needed, and I can start entering in my general properties information. Starting with my service name, I'll just call it printer. I don't have a specific name I want to call it, but you might want to give it the name of your printer and be more specific. Then I'll immediately shoot all the way to the right of this general properties field, and I'll update my sales department because that information is important. I have a sales department called digital black and white and digital color, so I'll have to make a decision on the type of printer that I'm setting up here. I'm going to go ahead and select color, and I'll say this is a color printer. And then also in this general properties area, we have this colors per side field just below the sales department. I'll also need to make sure that I click into this drop down and I select digital 1 click per side of run size. This is the standard for digital printers and copiers. There is an alternative option that says 1 click per side of finish size, but that's used in more specific scenarios where 1 click per side of run size is going to track 1 click per side of the page for run size material. Also, we have some of these common fields here, which we'll skip over, and we'll jump right down to the pricing properties. In the pricing properties area, we have our quantity, which is locked in at impressions. Then we have our waste, which is currently set to no paper waste. We'll want to set this to whatever waste is appropriate for our needs here. We have several options for referencing our global waste table. We also have the option to use my papers specific properties if I've configured my papers that way. And then I also have a generalized amount of waste. So for this example, I'm going to use following waste properties and set a generalized amount of waste. But I can also, if I wanted to reference the waste table, I could say use waste table row. And then on the left hand side of the service and the controls here, I can say click on waste table, and I can say what kind of waste or what levels I want to use. So if I were to use waste table row 1, I could set my number of setup sheets, and then based on the impressions of run size sheets, these different breaks that I have predetermined, I could have a variable amount of waste. So at 1,000 impressions of run size sheets, I'm going to be getting 10 setup sheets, and 5.7% of the overall run is going to be added as waste. At the very bottom here, I can set limits for each of these also, if I don't need to exceed anything. I'm going to close out of this, and like I said, I'm going to set this to use the following waste properties, and then I have to enter in how many setup sheets and what percentage of the run quantity. Either or is also an option. So I'll say 10 setup sheets and just 1% of the run quantity. So just below that, once I figured that out, this time field, there's only one option for digital printers and copiers, which is calculate time based on impressions or clicks using colors per side. So it's going to use our impressions based on this colors per side field above here. And then next we have our cost, which is important to this service. So we'll want to make sure our cost is accurate here. We have a time cost and a material cost, where our time cost is going to be our burden rate or our budgeted hourly rate, and we'll include all of our overhead into this rate. The only thing we won't include in here is our material cost, which will be our click cost. So typically when you're doing time cost and material cost, the time cost will go in this cost per hour field, and then we'll need to associate that with a rate. So over here on the run table, we have units per hour. This units is always based on whatever the quantity is, and our quantity is impressions. So this is impressions per hour. I'm going to give it a generalized number of 3,000. So that's 3,000 impressions per hour, but I haven't specified the size. So if I'm keeping things generalized, I'll have to also identify a specific size of impression that I'm using here. So the way I can do that is I'll put it in the title. So that way I know my printer is basing its averages on 8.5 by 11, which is supposed to be the most frequently run material that you're going to be running through the machine. So now I have a rate of 3,000 8.5 by 11 impressions per hour. but I don't have a material cost here. For digital printer copiers that are color, this situation exclusively is going to use our price table to capture our costs. So this material cost field here isn't going to be used in this case, but I also don't want to leave it blank because the program is trained to ask you for information whenever something's left blank. So we just need to put a placeholder in here. And I'll typically just put 1 cent. And that information is just conveying that it's not being used. So for my cost per hour, let's say I'll just put in $80 an hour. This multiplier field here I don't have to use, so I'm going to leave that blank. Just below the cost, we have our price. Right now it's defaulting to cost plus markup, but we're probably going to want to use a price table. So I'll change this in the drop-down menu to use price table. On the left-hand side, my price table just became available to me. If you notice, if I click away from it again, it grays out. If I click back to price table, it comes back. So I don't need to use this markup field either. Now I'm just going to go on the left-hand side here. I'm going to click into the price table. It's saying to use the price table, I need to save it. I'll click yes. So here in this price table, I'm going to choose some very specific options. I'm going to say how sides are printed. I'm going to select a row based on service quantity. I'm going to read the price in the selected cell as per each. And I'm going to calculate the service price using the step method. So these 5 options above here are going to determine how the table below is read. And there's a lot of flexibility here for what you're trying to recreate. If you're trying to create a specific price structure, you can. In this case, we're using, for option 1, select a column based on how sides are printed, and then we have the range of black, black over black, color, etc., etc. That's allowing us to capture our material costs on this run table, and it's allowing us to capture different material costs for the different kinds of jobs we're doing, whether it's black, color, or color over black, or the two-sided black over black or color over color. So the way you should fill this in, starting off with your costs in this cost per click area, your black rate will go in here, and I'll say 0.02, and I'll also just carry that over to my black over black. That doesn't need to double because the program will double the impressions to keep it accurate. Then I'll need to put in my color, which I'll say is 4 cents per impression. And I'll copy that over to color over color also. Then for this color over black field here, I just need to add those two together, the 4 cents and the 2 cents, and divide it by 2 because the program will keep the impression count accurate, so that'll keep our costs accurate. So that will be 0.03. And this is the general structure that should be followed for each of these columns. So in these service quantities here, I can enter in the upper limit for my quantity breaks if I'm using the step method above here. So I'll enter in 500, 1,000, and 2,000, just as an example. And what I'm doing here in this lower area is I'm setting these quantity breaks where 0 to 500 is going to use row 1. 501 to 1,000 is going to use row 2. 1,001 to 2,000 will use row 3. So you're in the step method, which is option 4 above here, you're always setting the upper limit for when you want it to move to the next value. So for more information on how price tables work or customizing price tables, you can review our price table documentation on support.printreach.com. For this example here, I'm just keeping it simple and I'm using the step method and I'm just setting a few quantity breaks. And then in here, I would just have to, for each of these types of jobs, set what I want my price per impression to be. So I've established my cost per impression, which is what I'm paying to create the job, and the price will be what the customer is paying. So feel free to adjust away from these default formattings. The key piece here is really just the first option, which gives us the ability to enter our costs. So once I have my cost in here, my prices in here, if I ever need to update those, I can come back here and say increase prices by a percentage and increase everything on the table by whatever percentage I type in. Or if I click in here and type in a negative percentage, it'll decrease everything. So I'll close out of this here. Won't save any changes for that. And once we have our waste, cost, price, and our rates and everything in here, the service is essentially ready to be tested. All these other fields down here for adjustment, minimum price, and default notes, those are all just general service fields, and we don't necessarily need to update them for this service, although we can if we're expecting to use our bid, rush, and special level pricing, or if we need a minimum price in here. As far as what's needed for the calculations for this service, we're tracking our costs, our time cost, and our material costs, and we have a price table. So now we would just need to go test it, and if our price isn't coming out where we want it to, we would just need to go update that price table. If there's any other questions on this topic, please feel free to reach out to support@printreach.com. Thank you.